I'm making a game. Let's start with a quick introduction. I'm a 19-year-old game art student from the Netherlands. I am about to start my second year next month and I'm mainly focused on learning 3D. It's summer break and that means free time. Free time means I can spend my time doing things I like. This means it's time to start an overtly overambitious and optimistic original out-of-this-world open world game. I am making a 3D action RPG. It'll have a small but content-rich world filled with, well, richness and content. You might be wondering why I think I can achieve this by myself. I wonder the same thing myself. But at least I got some small projects on my belt, which is where the current footage is coming from. But these projects were small and for school subjects, and this project will be big and not for a school project. The current working title of the game is, as the video's title and the thumbnail already stated, Youkai Hunter. But what is Youkai Hunter, I hear you asking? Well, I was just getting to that, there is a body's voice in my head. Youkai Hunter is a game where you play as a yokai hunter. Your job as a yokai hunter is to hunt yokai on an island so infested by yokai they had to create a new branch of samurai called yokai hunters. That made no sense, so let's try that again. In the game, the player plays as a Ronin turned yokai hunter, specialized into tracking and fighting these creatures. They will go on various contracts to hunt these yokai, each with their own exploitable weaknesses and strengths. They will do this on a currently unnamed island with various secrets. Well, I know this very much sounds like Monster Hunter, and the working title is really not helping in that department. I assure you that it's not just a Monster Hunter clone. The player will have several methods of fighting: pointy stick, bendy stick shooting, sharp sticks, and Naruto. That is to say, swords, bows, and ninjutsu. The player can gather materials to craft stronger swords and bows, or upgrade the ones they currently possess. You know, like the game I have taken some inspiration from. Ninjutsu is a bit more complex. There are 3 types and the Trinity forms Nimpo, which is like ninjutsu but a fancier word. These techniques eat up a resource called Ki, which will slowly build up as you attack and defend. If you get hit, you will lose a part of this energy, punishing rushed combat. Offense ninjutsu will directly deal damage to the opponent. Throw a fireball, that's offense. Defense ninjutsu will directly counteract damage to the opponent. Make a wall out of stone, that's defense. Trick ninjutsu will break defense and leave an opponent open. Teleport behind a defending opponent, that's trick. These techniques can't be learned traditionally, but instead force the player to work toward them. I will explain more about this later in the video. The player will also be able to bolster themselves with various types of fillable flasks. Flasks will have different uses, allowing the player to mix between them for varied playstyle. There is, of course, the standard healing flask that refills your health, but there's also flasks that make you receive more damage in exchange for other benefits, such as dealing more damage yourself. The player can refill these flasks easily at a resting spot or when going out on a new contract, but also while out in the overworld by mixing certain plants they can find. There's a bit more to be said about the combat system still, but I'll come back to it when it's time to actually develop the system inside the game engine. For now, let's continue to the world itself. The game takes place on a big island. As mentioned before, it's currently unnamed, so let's call it Gertrude for now. Gertrude is overridden by yokai, which are all just waiting to be hunted. How convenient. These yokai live intertwined with the natural animal life on Gertrude, creating an ecosystem. What this means for gameplay is that eradicating a species of yokai might make others more dominant in the area. The current footage you're seeing is me drawing some quick early sketches of a point of interest might look like. Please keep in mind that these are still very rough and subject to change. Let's be realistic, I'm just one person and I'll be back to being busy next month, so making a full scope of world game the likes of The Witcher or Skyrim is just straight up not going to happen. Instead, I am planning on making a smaller, more segmented world filled with little things to do everywhere. There will, for example, be small Jesus statues placed beside the road which the player can pray to after finding and repairing smaller stone towers in the vicinity to get a permanent upgrade. The roads will also contain random NPC encounters, some having shops, others having swords ready to show you from up close. The merchants will always prioritize selling materials inside the player's wishlist, giving the player an actual incentive to look in their stock instead of just walking by with the assumption that the merchants are useless junk anyway. A smaller thing to fill up the world is the various plants and mining deposits on the islands. These will be needed to create flash cam weaponry, but they're also just there to make the fields and worlds feel more alive. There will also be various abandoned houses spread along the roads of the island. The player can rest at these houses to replenish their health and flesh along with the other things I will get to when it's time for it. As you can probably tell, this is very much just inspired by Dark Souls and Elden Ring, but why reinvent the wheel when the wheel is already perfect to begin with? There are of course also houses that aren't abandoned. These will be inside or near villages, which will be the small hub locations for the player where they can upgrade their equipment and buy new tools. These villages will also be where the player gets their contracts and are thus vital for the core gameplay loop of the game. Another example why the villages are important is to give the player hints toward important locations. A vendor may, for example, sell a map towards a nearby shrine, which are locations that are even more important than villages if the player wants to become as strong as they can get. Other points of interest are divine trees, which hold seeds required to upgrade the maximum capacity of flasks. These locations will often be guarded by mini-bosses, giving the player a challenge before they can get the reward. Another important location will be the various pagodas within the forest of the island. These pagodas house a twin pair of key orbs. The player can choose either a black orb to get more ki when defending, or a white orb to get more ki when attacking. The player is fully free in deciding which orbs they go for to adjust for their playstyle. There are still other points of interest, but let's zoom in on the shrines for now, since these are the locations the player will want to find the most. The island will have various shrines spread throughout, both near villages and in hidden forested areas. These shrines can be used just like the abandoned houses as resting spots. These locations, however, also provide some other features like acting as fast travel locations and giving the ability to fight bosses again if the player wants to do so. Something else these shrines provide, however, are the import techniques. The shrines won't just give these away for free, however. To get the import technique, the player will have to pray to the kami residing within, which will bring the player's spirit to the realm of the kami. This divine realm represents a trial to the player. The type of trial is dependent on the type of an import technique rewarded at the end. Offense trials require the player to fight a mini-boss. Defense trials will require the player to fight through waves of enemies to test the resource management. And trick trials require the player to move between enemies whilst remaining unseen. These locations will hold secrets telling what happened to the island and why it's so overrun by Youkai, giving the player the clues they need to get rid of the infestation for good. Since I'm not sure how many of these titles there will be just yet, I am probably going to make the contents slightly randomized for some variation between the different trials without taking months to make. I've talked long enough without showing the actual project inside the game engine. It's because I quite frankly don't have that much to show as of yet, seeing as I started like 1 week ago with the actual engine side of things. The game is made in Unity, and please keep your pitchforks away for a moment because I honestly don't care about the controversy from a while back, and I like working with the engine, so I work with it. Anyway, I keep rambling. This is what the game looks like right now. At the moment you can only walk around and admire the small field with trees. I have listed the tutorials for the shaders I used in the description because that part of game dev is still black magic to me, and I just followed along with people who seemed to know what they were doing. There's obviously a lot of work to be done still, but we'll get to that. I prefer showing things bit by bit instead of just randomly appearing with the game all done. So you get to see what each step is like instead of just seeing what the game is like after 5 months of development from the start. Alright, so let's take a look at the roadmap for the project instead of walking around the empty nothingness that the game currently is. I could start by adding a lot of glamour, but that would be a bad idea for several reasons, so let's take a logical boring steps instead. Well, not boring, just not flashy like the creation of enemies and all that. This here is the list of tasks that need to be done still. It might look like a lot, and that's because of this. In fact, you can't even read it unless you zoom in. And the list will probably grow even bigger as the project continues. I've organized it to make it slightly less confusing on what will need to happen and when, and which systems are required to begin working on other systems. The boxes with a red outline are the ones already finished, and the blue marks things I have in mind for the first actual devlog. It might seem like a lot of tasks for a single devlog, but I'm not too worried with how long it will take. As you can see, the next devlog will be mainly focused on setting up the inventory system along with the small animation thing. I put up a Discord server where I'll post smaller updates about the project. So if you're interested in that or just want to talk to me, or some of my friends already in the server, feel free to join. I've put a link in the description of this video. I know it's still incredibly early for this kind of stuff, seeing as my channel is about the size of an ant, but I'd rather grow it slowly and naturally than announce it later and get an influx of people streaming in all at once. Anyway, I don't really have anything else to say, so please leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you're interested in following along with the creation of this project, or just feel like being generous with your likes. So, bye.